Okay, so section 5.4 is called the impact of agricultural practices. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So, the first agricultural practice is monocropping, and this is where we grow one single species of crop. So, you might be driving through our Indiana countryside and you might look out over some agricultural fields and see an entire field of corn or an entire field of wheat or soybeans. And so that's just a very common thing that we do in these large agricultural, like mega farms. And this is very efficient for harvest. It's very efficient for the farmer for pesticide and fertilizer application. And so it's less expensive then, since it's very efficient. And that's, a good thing for these smaller farmers, especially in order to turn a profit. But it happens very commonly in these mega farms as well. An issue with monocropping is that it greatly decreases biodiversity, which means that the fields are more prone to pests and there are fewer natural predators for those pests. It also increases soil erosion because once the crops are harvested, kind of all at once at one time, the soil then is left bare, and so the topsoil can actually erode away, causing issues with that. It also decreases habitat diversity for the species that are living in the area, so that's another problem as well. Okay, another agricultural process or practice, that can be an issue actually for the environment is tilling. So tilling is when farmers will use a tractor to go through and mix and break up the soil prior to planting the seeds because it makes the seeds go into the ground better. It loosens the soil so that the seeds can grow better. Their roots can actually go into the soil easier. An issue with tilling is that it increases erosion by loosening up all of that topsoil. So just imagine we've got a bunch of loose topsoil and now it rains and then a lot of erosion can happen. It also breaks up the leftover root structure from the harvest of the plant. And so, that can be an issue as well. Then tilling it causes a loss of organic matter and then the topsoil nutrients over time because of that erosion. And then if you've ever driven by a field when it's being plowed or tilled, you'll notice that there's a lot of dust that's in the air. If you've ever driven past one that's being tilled, you'll actually get like a lot of dust on your windshield, and you can use your windshield wipers to see the dust coming off. So we call that dust particulate matter, and it's actually a form of air pollution. And if you breathe in a lot of this dust, it can cause respiratory irritation. This is supposed to be an S to stand for respiratory irritation. And then it can also deposit sediments in the nearby water, which increases the turbidity or the cloudiness of the water, which can be problems for the organisms that live there. So, looking at this picture, you'll notice, let me go ahead and get rid of my video really quickly. You can see here what happens in a no-till farming ecosystem and how much healthier the roots are. We've got a lot of worms that are burrowing here, which is good for decomposition and aerating the soil. And some leftover crop residue, which is good for adding nutrients back into the soil. And then here's what it looks like in a tilled ecosystem. This is the tilled soil. It's compacted here, and you can see where the compaction is. That's called the plow plan. Then it's very hard underneath that, and we don't have a lot of life really growing in that area. So that's what happens with tilling. Another agricultural practice that can be damaging to ecosystems is the slash and burn technique. So really this happens in developing nations and would have happened here in the 17 and 1800s where and then now today in developing nations where they use slash and burn agriculture, that's where they cut down all the vegetation and then they burn it to clear the land so that they can grow crops. It does return nutrients in the plants back into the soil. So I will say that, fire does put nutrients in the soil. So that is a positive. A negative, though, is that we're actually deforesting the land, which creates a loss of habitat, biodiversity. It lessens the CO2 that's being sequestered from the atmosphere. And it also, there's a loss of the air pollution filtration that plants naturally do. So that's a problem. And then we see that it also releases, because of the burning of biomatter, it releases CO2 into the atmosphere. It also releases carbon monoxide and some nitrous oxide. These are all greenhouse gases that lead to global warming and climate change. And then burning increases the dust or pollution that's in the air, the smoke, and that increases the particulate matters that we're breathing in. And again, that causes respiratory illnesses. And because we're losing the trees, it lowers the albedo, therefore making the area warmer, which is not healthy for the organisms that might be living there. And then synthetic fertilizers or inorganic fertilizers. They don't return organic matter to the soil, and there's no increased water holding capacity for the soil, which is a negative, and there's no soil decomposers that are being restored in the ecosystem. When you add manure or biomass or compost as a fertilizer, a more organic fertilizer, you're actually adding these things to the soil. Then with synthetic fertilizers, leaching can occur. This is where water will wash away the excess nitrates and phosphates into the groundwater or into the surface waters as runoff, and you can end up contaminating the groundwater for drinking. And then you can also create eutrophication or a eutrophic ecosystem where the algal colonies bloom out of control and cause the fish to suffocate because we're reducing the amount of oxygen that is in the water. So those are all different agricultural practices that have negative impacts on the environment. And so what you need to do is explain one disadvantage of using inorganic commercial fertilizers for your practice FRQ for FRQ 5.4. Answers to that will be posted in Canvas. And then for our next section, we're going to be talking about 5.5 irrigation. Oops, let me go back here. And so if you have any questions, make sure that you're talking to me in class, and I'll see you guys next time.